you better make sure that you got church. Oh, come on. Hit it.
Hi, and Happy New Year to you. Certainly is a pleasure for me to be able to say those words and for us to look forward to closing out 1986. As many of you know, I've been away from the set from time to time, and I've had the pleasure and the fortune of having Miss Pentecost carry the ball in my absence, and she's been so polite to stop up and visit me as I'm here convalescing at this great health facility here in our city, the Methodist Hospital. So we're doing something kind of new for the first time, but you know how we do it on Captions. The show must go on.
Yeah, ironically enough, I didn't hear you say those same words about 15 minutes ago. No, you've been real good. I have to admit, you've been better.
So what would you like for us to talk about today, Ms. Pentecost?
Oh, I want to talk about reflections of 86, Community Action Agency, Peoria Citizens Committee for Economic Opportunity. And I want to throw things out to you like if I say something like, what's the most memorable time experience positive for 1986 Community Action Agency with you? Things like that.
Okay, well, I'm always glad to reflect back on my work at Community Action. I'm a firm believer that we must take the bitter with the sweet, and if someone hands us a lemon, then we must make ourselves a glass of lemonade. So as I look back over 86, certainly I think the most refreshing thing about the year of 86 for me at Community Action has been the group of people that have assembled themselves and dedicated themselves to the mission of improving the quality of life in Peoria. And doing that with a kind of commitment and a fearlessness that suggests that we take on unpopular tasks and challenge the unpopular topics at times of when programs for the less fortunate are not being viewed favorably by our very popular president. So for me to be able to share experiences with folk committed to educating children, with folk committed to raising up food and feeding the hungry, for me to sit here and know that through our efforts at the food bank, some approximately 1 million pounds of food have gotten into the tables and mouths and stomachs of persons in need. For me to know that as we sit here yet this evening, that there's someone out there with a storm door, a storm window, whose attic has been insulated, whose children are not sleeping on top of coats with irons wrapped up in the bed to keep them warm, and worse yet, those who have been sleeping without light, heat at all. that in some small way we as an agency have been able to contribute to an improved quality of life, and do that with people who didn't always say, well, sorry, it's 5 o'clock, time to go home, or who didn't say, well, you know, they're saying bad things about us where we work, and I don't feel good about working here any longer because of the things they say about our job and the place where we work. Or to see the young people who come into our video training classes and who start out with one of those, I don't care nothing about this video equipment, I just want to get me a paycheck.
Yeah.
And who leave wanting to know how they can go into communications as an endeavor where they may earn a paycheck. For me to try to pick out any one of those activities and say one means more than another, I couldn't do that. But for me to have, it's the first time I've ever really been under the weather for a sustained period of time. Controversy is not new to me, but being under the weather and it being something serious it's a brand new experience for me. And to know that I had people who cared enough about me to redouble their efforts. You know, when I was a kid growing up, they would say, well, when the cat's away, the mice play. Or when we worked at Caterpillar and you was on the line and if you could slack off, you'd see the guy slacking off. Or when I worked at Ford Motor Company and you had to wheel 50-some cars an hour, keep up with that assembly line, guys look for ways to get out of work. And to find people who would call me and say, is there anything I can do? Is it any way that I can be of some help? That's probably the highlight of my my experience in community action in 1986.
You know, Mike, what went through my mind as you talk about when the cat's away, the mice play, and if there were, to me, in the short time that I've been there, and I've been on board since April, if there would be any playing, it would be while you were there, because we know that what it means, the agency really means to you, and if there's anything that's lacking, you'll pick up the ball. We just expect you to be there to pick up the slack. But when you got in a position where you weren't there, it's like hit everybody in the heart and say, oh, this is serious, we better keep the ball running and hold the fort and keep things going until he gets back. Because I think and believe that all of us in our own way know what this really agency and the time, the love and the effort that you put into it, what it means to you, which gives us a sense of wanting to do our very best, because we know it means a lot to you.
Well, I think the growth experience for me has been to learn how much it means to other people. I probably have received more letters and cards of thank yous and phone calls and expressions of appreciation in the past 2 months than I have in 10 years. That's just something we don't do as a people. You know, we have become socialized into believing that the government owes us something or somebody owes us. So if you pay my light bill, I didn't feel I owed anybody thank you, you know, or if you helped me get a job, I didn't come back and say, gee, I really appreciate that. Or if my kids are now graduating from Head Start, I didn't feel like I should write a little note and say thanks. But all of a sudden, I see, sense, and feel true, honest appreciation. You know, and sometimes when you're weary, you say, well, what are we doing this for? You know?
What's the point?
What's the point of all of this if it doesn't mean anything to the people? And our people tend to, I guess by nature, because of the pressure cooker in which we live from day to day, we respond best under pressure.
Wow.
We are used to reacting as opposed to proacting. I won't say the name of the paper that I read this morning.
I wonder why.
I'm still having trouble using that name. But nonetheless, as I perused the paper this morning, I noticed on the editorial page there was some reference to help for the poor. And beneath it was a headline that talked about the racial violence, not only in New York, because there was also another article where Mayor Koch is calling for a national council on racism. And what I see in that, the handwriting on the wall, is that we're allowing the issue of race to rear its ugly head again, to divide and conquer us as a nation, a country, a state, so that you put yourself in a position where the strength of the collective differences becomes the weakness that allows us to continue to be manipulated against one another. And so it's my hope that we begin to see racism for what it truly is. Racism is not a black problem. It is not black folks who are not hiring white teenagers. The blame the victim mentality of 86 must be addressed in 87. And when I say blame the victim, what I mean is you cannot teach a youngster that it's okay to tell a white lie, but you can't tell a black lie.
Okay.
That
Right.
somehow what that youngster sees in the mirror isn't attractive unless it looks like Prince, Time, Vanity 6. Our heroes are going in to have plastic surgery, to have their noses made to look like Caucasians. Mothers are holding their babies in their arms. Daddies are holding babies in their arms, and they're hoping that their hair doesn't turn. You ever heard them use that
Yes.
term? Meaning
Turn bad.
bad like their daddies.
Yeah.
Okay. We can't continue to put the idea into the minds of youngsters that they are not beautiful people because of their being, and then want to punish them for wanting to escape their being. We don't hear about the white movie stars getting their noses widened.
This is true.
Or trying to get plastic surgery so they'll have thick, full lips, because they're taught that what they see in the mirror is something acceptable to their sight. So I think when you talk about racism and the cultural crisis that our people experience, a proud African warrior would not have shot heroin, would not have sniffed crack, would not have sought to escape the reality of his existence because of the pride in their heritage. And every day now we're seeing on 60 Minutes and all of the national stories about how the other ethnic groups are making it. The Lebanese are sticking together, the Chinese are sticking together, the Puerto Ricans, the Spanish, they're sticking together. And I started asking myself, well, what do they have in common? You know, and it's they have a culture. They celebrate their own holidays, or holy days, if you will. They have a land that they think about, that they came from. You know, and we'll tell you very quickly. The Vietnamese will tell you they're from Vietnam. But somehow our legacy stops at Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, cotton fields, slavery, step and fetch it, and all of those signs, symbols, and images that have said to our folk they should not expect to win. And so I don't think you can talk about addressing racism without talking about dealing with the question of culture in a very serious and a very real way. And you can't teach young kids in District 150 to love themselves if you don't love them. You can't teach but a handful to be special, unique, and different if they can't find any authority figure, anyone that they look up to, anyone that they can respect that looks like them. I mean, you know, what I would hope we could go into 87 with is I would like when you take these cameras out of this room, I would just like for you to stop in the retail establishments in this city and take a picture of who's working and see who has the jobs. Because if we're going into banks, into grocery stores, into retail establishments, and we don't see people of color there, and I'm not just talking to black folks, I'm talking to all of us. Because see, you in the white community, when you spend your dollars in places where there are no black folk working, you can't complain about spending dollars on welfare. Because you must say to the employers of this community, we must hire whom comes. You can't tell me that you run a newspaper and you can't find any qualified blacks to report black news. Consequently, we must suffer with a distorted perception of black life. You must make some affirmative steps to do something about that. If you're sincere. Now, if you want a permanent underclass, if you want your children to continue to pay the welfare checks of children of color, then I say sit back and do nothing about racism. But as we see in our paper this morning, like there's a new revelation in town that racism just popped up. I think we're being naive, and I think we all ought to look deep within our heart and try and go into 87 with a commitment to do something about it. And I'm not talking about simply white folks, because I think there are a lot of us black folk who have some very serious racial problems we need to deal with.
That's right.
Starting with who's too dark to date your daughter, to who's not qualified because they're black, so you don't take your car there to get it worked on. You don't go there to buy a car. You know, if you don't shop, if you don't patronize black businesses, then you can't complain if they don't hire blacks, because they don't have the business to offer the jobs. You know, and to take that thing full circle, I think those black entrepreneurs who are in business must understand that there are no excuses for not doing the very best. You know, I'm just a poor, struggling black businessman, so you should understand why it's late and you didn't get the product when you promised it, the way you promised it. I think that whole entire arena must be addressed by both blacks and whites. I think we need to come together in Peoria, particularly if we want Peoria to become a community that begins to attract industry, because there's a conscientious labor force here. There's an educational system here that one would not be ashamed or offended to send their children here. And there are places where one might frequent with some degree of culture, intellect, and a quality of life. Otherwise, I suspect we'll go into 87 with notions of when are they going to turn the lights out, and when is Peoria going to be a ghost town. We have got to change that, and we cannot do that by stepping on the heads, necks, shoulders, and backs of one race or the other, or one class or the other. I think it's a thing that's got to be done in unity, and it's got to be done with some semblance of leadership and some semblance of integrity. Or I think we're fooling ourselves about attempting to compete effectively in a society where competition has become extremely keen, and just happening to have a couple of high-ranking politicians living in your midst is no longer adequate to attract the contracts that we need. I think now we're going to break for a moment, and we'll be right back with more on captions right after this.
Okay, we're back, and it's good to be back. And if you just turned on your television set, you're watching Captions, and my name is Audrey Pentecost, sitting here with our Executive Director of Community Action Agency, Mr. Michael E. Banks, and we're having another brilliant talk, I might add. You know, Mike, there are some things that's going through my mind, and one thing in particular. When I was out in California, I went shopping. Well, the first instance, I went shopping with a gentleman that I've known for years who is in a very good position. He's administrator in the Department of Rehab, works for the state, been working for the state for about 25 years, fought a lot of different issues. But we would go to the bank together sometimes, and there would be a black teller and there would be a white teller. And invariably, I mean, if there was a choice that had to be made, he would go to the white teller. Invariably. Now, I saw that 1-2 times. I said, well, maybe it's just coincidental. But it happened. Then, on another instance, I was invited to sing at a predominant, well, actually all-white church. And this was a real big issue because there was known to be a lot of racism in this particular church. And for them to invite me to come in and sing on a Sunday morning was quite a breakthrough. And this particular gentleman I invited to come along with me. And when the pastor came to greet us, and the pastor had already known me, and he met this gentleman, he says, "It's so good to have you here with us today." And this gentleman hung his head, wouldn't even look at him eye to eye, and he said, I'm talking about a black man now, he said, "Well, I'm glad that you let me come." And I wish I could have found a hole to crawl in. I mean, it seemed like everything that I had worked for and prayed about, and here's this great moment, and I invite someone that should know about the cause and has spoken about the cause and said he's been a part of it, would say something. And even the pastor was embarrassed at that comment.
Well, you see, it's got to start in here. Okay. We must believe in ourselves first. There's freedom ain't free. That's an old slogan of the 60s. And America is about struggle. There's not going to be a free ride handed to anybody. And I think if we don't walk with pride and hold our head up and look people in the eye and tell them what we believe to be true, then I don't think we can ever command or expect to gain the respect and confidence of any group of people, any ethnic group. You know, and today, you know, I think one of the deadliest diseases that is hurting us as a community is amnesia. We have forgotten who we are. We have forgotten where we came from. We have forgotten the struggles of our forefathers. You know, when you think about the fact that there were men who had their feet chopped off so that they wouldn't run away, and they would run away on one foot and have their other foot chopped off. in order to be a free man. And then to have some kid look at me and tell me he ain't taking science because it's too hard. I mean, we have just totally forgotten how great a people we really are. That, you know, I remember when I visited Africa for the first time, and they sang this song, Brother Man, who've come home from the foreign land, who was stolen under the cover of darkness and the big gun, the strongest of the strong, and you survived, and you're the children of the strongest of the strong. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like being Superman's child.
Yeah.
And somehow you allowed your mind to be turned into Toby. You know, if you watch Roots and you remember who Kunta Kinte was, to allow your mind to be turned into Toby. And so now you need some reefer, some cocaine, some alcohol, or some violence to prove that you are really a proud African warrior again, because deep in your heart you've lost it. And our children, they can't say, well, they didn't teach me Black history at Manual, mm-hmm. and that's a good enough excuse. Or they didn't teach me about myself. They who? You didn't teach you. Uh-huh. I mean, it doesn't take anything to get up and go to a library and pick up a book and start finding out how great your heritage really is, how much you really have going for you, how you really are on top of it, and the only thing holding you down is yourself. In Peoria, the only thing holding this community back from coming together is us. We say that the white man manipulates the blacks against the blacks. Mm-hmm. Maybe he does. But you gotta, you know, it's like my daddy used to say, you can't make nobody love somebody unless they kind of want to. And by the same token, you can't make them hate nobody unless they kind of want to. Okay, so you kind of gotta want to be part of this thing. You gotta kind of want to say, it's easier not to struggle. It's easier just to give up. I used to be an ardent advocate of a woman's right for public assistance. She have a right to be on welfare. And I would get indignant when I would hear white folks say in my presence, that's just a bunch of lazy women that want a check to do nothing. Because I remember my mother, and we would be waiting on that one check, come in that little envelope, and them cans. Back then they used to give you some powdered milk in a 5-pound can, like a chilling can, and some powdered eggs, and we'd be waiting on this stuff because this is going to feed us. But Mama would have been glad to take a job, though. And was still doing day work, you know what I'm talking about, going clean somebody's house, and then come home and take care of us. And then have somebody call her lazy, after she been worked all day cleaning their house, then come home and take care of 5 kids, and have somebody refer her as lazy. That would make me mad. Mm-hmm. But for me to see young kids today talk about they'd rather be on ADC than have a job, It angers me. Talking about, well, I make more money on public aid, or I just want to get me a baby and I can get my own place in the housing. Well, you know, it's easy to say we shouldn't blame them, but I do. Because I was 15 when I left home. And I can think about many senior citizens sitting out there today that left home a lot younger. The kids today are going to have to wake up, you know, well, we ain't got nothing to do. So that means they should be about slipping into the Blue Note, or slipping into this joint, or slipping into that joint, because they didn't have nothing to do. And I remember we didn't have nothing to do either, so you took a skate and pulled it apart and got a 2x4 and made yourself a scooter or something.
That's right.
You understand? You know, there's a proverb in the Bible that talks about us getting weaker and wiser. You know, and you look at kids today and you watch a little 4-year-old grown person talk to you, and your mouth, you're astonished. Did that come out her mouth? You know, my daughter says things to me and I cringe. You know, she's 9 years old and she announces to me that she's a virgin. You know, like, that wouldn't even have been a topic for discussion, but she's making me aware of her state, you know, and this is what's happening. And, you know, boys want to talk about this, you know. So we got to talk about it.
Yeah.
But the kids, they don't want to make $1. If the job ain't going to pay but $1 or $2, then we bother with that. Hard work is something that we want to run from. I'm too cool to be out here getting sweaty and dirty and rubbing sores and blisters and calluses on my hands. Those are the attitudes that we must change. And the parents who talk about, I don't know what I'm going to do with my kids, they need somebody to whoop them.
This is true.
I mean, you couldn't have got my mother to tell her she didn't know what she was going to do with us. Or grandmother either, for that matter. And today we got, you know, it's like we have let the media tell us we're in bad shape, so we believe it. We sit around feeling sorry for ourselves. We've let the TV tell us right now that what we really need is some place away from the home to pass out condoms, because our parents ain't gonna do it. Everything is being given away as if it's somebody else's job. But it's our job, and we got to stand up and say it, and we got to stand up and say no. You know, we used to have this joke about a birth control pill, and the safest birth control pill was a nickel. You know, and when you felt that boy talking too hard to you and you didn't really know what to say to him, just take this nickel and put it between your knees and squeeze it and sit there. And squeeze on that nickel and you won't have no problem.
Yes.
We have got to go back to some of those things that are called old-fashioned. You know, today if you whoop your kid too hard and leave a whelp on him, somebody want to butt in your business. The state is involved in whether you spanked him too hard. We accept homosexuality like, well, they got rights. But the world cannot move to a point where immorality's rights supersedes morality. You see, black folk have always been the moral conscience of America. We have always stood up and said that treatment is unfair. When we watched the presidential debates, Reverend Jackson was talking about what was humane for the world. And now all of a sudden, in order to be accepted, we don't want to talk about what's in the Bible any longer. We want to talk about what's modern, what's hip, what's superfly, what's cool. It's okay. And I think what we have to do is we have to take that belt and we have to do our jobs as parents in the black community. And we can't turn our kids over to District 150 and expect somebody else to raise them. And maybe some of us are going to have to make a decision about whether we can afford a $50,000 or $60,000 family income with two of us working, and whether, you know, that thing called the movement of women moving out into the workplace. And I'm not trying to sell anybody on chauvinism. I'm just saying that you can't leave your kids to be raised by themselves as latchkey children and then wonder why they grow up without the same moral fiber that you did, or why the same life value systems that we all held dear. I never saw my mother sit up in front of me and smoke no reefer. You know, if they was gonna argue and curse, we had to go in the other room. Matter of fact, there was something called grown folks conversation, and if you stood around like you was trying to eavesdrop, you might get smacked upside the head. But now we want our kids to grow up so fast. And then we want to read about babies making babies. We can't have it both ways. So I think, you know, in trying to bring this thing to some sort of closure, programs cannot be the solution. Sure, we can fill some part of that vacuum. Jobs. Sure, teenagers need a job. But you tell one of them to go make himself a shoebox and go out here on the corner and start shining shoes, and he get insulted. Literally insulted.
That's true.
And I remember keeping me a pocket full of money shining shoes for my needs in my day. But see, today, if you don't have a gold chain around your neck and some on your pinky finger and that certain little walk and lean, you're not going to be cool to the young ladies. And we have lost what really counts in terms of manhood. And I'm not blaming that on white folk. I'm blaming that on black parents. Sure, white folks have made it rough, but, you know, birth is rough. Our Creator intended for us to struggle. I mean, if you just think about what it takes for that sperm to germinate an egg, and the odds against that, it's a serious struggle. So life is about a struggle. And somehow the black community today wants an easy way out. And with all that has happened to me of recent months, it'd be easy for me to sit here and be on a tirade about how Caucasians have treated me, but I don't hold any malice against anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Because I still think that right now we're in a position where what we need to be talking about as a black community, we don't need to be sitting around talking about when them folk downtown going to figure out what to do about Southtown.
Uh-huh.
Why can't we sit down and figure it out?
Yes, I see what you're saying.
What's wrong with 100 of us who own land that's in phase 2 or phase 3 or whatever that phase is that they got is next for us?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we sitting there waiting for somebody to hand us a check to move? See, the truth is, we're not as poor as we want everybody to believe. We got a little money in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
And if 100 of us got together and hired us a lawyer and an architect and decided what we wanted to do with our land in terms of redeveloping it and what we wanted to put up as collateral and started investing in ourselves and believing in ourselves, we could solve our own problem. And we wouldn't be sitting there pointing the finger at Mr. Maloof ain't did this and Jim Thompson ain't did that and Leonard Eunice ain't did this and Dan Gooder ain't did that. We must begin to do for self. And we can. We got attorneys in town. And as a matter of fact, we got enough common sense to know what we don't know. You know, I didn't know what was wrong with me, but I knew I better come in here and find somebody that could tell me what was wrong with me and what needed to be done. And we as a community have got to quit sitting down waiting for a black Messiah to come riding in on a horse and hand us a house and hand us a job and hand us happiness in 87, because we'll be waiting until 97 and beyond, because it's not going to be like that. You know, for any of you out there that have read Megatrends, you know that we're in a transitional economy. That this country, see, we used to think, black folks used to sit back and think, well, you know, white folks, they have all the answers. They know what they're doing. They got this all figured out, and they just won't let us in on the secret. Well, I got a secret for you. Don't nobody have all the answers, and many of them is doing the very best they can to stay afloat. And if somebody would have told you it would have been a big white elephant sitting over there with all the geniuses Caterpillar had working for them, they'd have called me insane. And if we didn't learn anything as a community, we should have learned from that we can't sit back and put our future in the hands of anybody. Michael Banks, city councilman. See, because God gave all of us a brain, 5 senses, and something to think with. And we need to just come together and agree on one thing and do that one thing.
One step at a time.
And then agree on another thing.
I see.
And do that one thing. Then I think we can sit at the end of 87 and say, you know, we laid the foundation for that new subdivision over there. We pooled our land banking, as a term that shouldn't be strange to us. Sharecropping wasn't. We knew what that meant.
Yes.
So simply pooling our land, and we pooled our land, and we got this business going. But see, we've allowed not just white folks, but we've allowed ourselves to be told You can't trust nobody black. You can't get 10 black folk in a room together without them saying, uh-oh, better keep an eye on so-and-so.
Yes.
Better watch so-and-so.
Yes.
Better watch. Well, if I keep you to where you can't trust your own, you don't have to trust me. Trust yourself.
Yes.
Trust the common interest.
Yes.
You know, if the water is over there, and 10 of us are all trying to get to the water, all we have to do is trust that the water is over there.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And we're going to all be thirsty. And just the law of nature, the law that a thirsty man or woman needs water, is going to predict our behavior. And we're going to all head toward that water. Okay? Where we've gotten lost, we think it ain't enough water to go around. And it's more to go around than we know what to do with. So what we've got to begin to do, you know, you got some people running for office. There's an election coming up. First thing somebody going to say is, well, I voted for that Polk. Now here comes Don Jackson. I ain't going to vote for nobody. I didn't like what Mr. Polk did. I ain't going to trust Don Jackson. Or I didn't like what Leonard Eunice did. I ain't going to vote for him. I didn't like what Dan Gura did. I ain't going to vote for him. I ain't going to vote for nobody. And you know what? I guarantee you, when you vote for nobody, you will have voted for somebody.
Yes, that's true. Indirectly.
Okay? What you have to do is you have to continue to struggle. As a matter of fact, if you did vote for somebody you don't like what they do, you have to go over their house and tell them. You have to call them up on the phone. And when, if that answering machine is on, get in your car and drive over there and tell them. Say, look, man, I voted for you. This is what I want you to do for me. That's the way this country was intended to operate. That's the way Peoria will work.
Yeah.
Not by sitting back saying, well, Brother Banks here, tell him. Brother Campbell going to get them straightened out. And I know Brother Gwen going to be on their case. No. It's going to be an inside job if it gets done. Sure, we can help because we get paid to have access to information, to share it like we're doing now. But really, we're contractors. We get so many dollars to fix so many houses. We don't get a salary to run off at the mouth about what government needs to do. We as a people got to do that. That's what I look forward to in 87. I think if we can begin to see the hope come back, that, you know how you hear him say, well, what, I'm just one person. What can I do? And you know what one person did. Right?
Yes. One person.
Just one man.
Just one man.
Right?
Yes.
With some faith in his father,
Yes.
he turned that whole ball game around.
He sure did.
Okay. So I think what we need to do is we need to try to have a little belief in one person.
Yeah.
Okay. Put a little faith in it. Come together and say, we're going to make Peoria a better place in 87. Instead of sitting around talking about, well, I'm going down to Atlanta. I think I'm headed to Houston. And I'm going to Florida. And you know, funny thing, here lately I've been seeing them heading on back.
Yeah.
There's no utopia. Life is what you make it. And as we wind this program down, didn't mean to preach, but when I get a chance to just share what's on my heart with you, I felt the need to do that, so I did it. Don't apologize for it, because I said it in the spirit of love. I do wish you a very happy new year in 87 from myself, the staff and the board at Community Action Agency, and certainly from my companion and soldier in the struggle, Audrey Pentecost, we want you to have the best of 87. With that, we're going to close. This has been Captions. Happy New Year.
We are the 1986 fall session of the JTPA training program.
Have a